welcome to the Innovation Depot. Has anyone not been here before? Look at all these new faces. Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you in our home. I'm Brooke. I'm the CEO here at the Innovation Depot. We're so excited about today. This is a packed crowd. We've got videographers. We've got tons of pizza and tons of beverages. So please make yourself at home. There's a few seats in the front. I'm going to give you 2 announcements, and then I'm going to get off the stage. Has anyone in this room gone through a program called Voltage? Oh, a few hands. Awesome. We have a program for idea stage founders. So if you have an idea and you're currently working for a corporation or a really boring company and you're ready to quit that boring company, put on your jeans and your boots and come work at the Innovation Depot with no boss. Let's give it a try before you quit, okay? So for 5 weeks out of the year, or 5 weeks coming up, you're gonna work alongside amazing professionals that are gonna teach you how to validate that idea. Okay, so sign up. Applications close on the 23rd. We'll validate that idea and decide if you can quit that job and put on your jeans and your boots and come to the Innovation Depot. Second announcement, Tech on Tap next week on the 20th. There's already 100 people coming. It's going to be a great event. Free food, free drinks, great fellowship. So make sure to come. And thank you all for being here. We're so glad you're here. Take it away, Austin.
Yeah, thank you. All right, hey, I'm Austin. Will and I kind of run this show. You see some other people with Birmingham AI shirts on. Those are just like fanboys. But no, those are people who have contributed some way to yeah. If you see someone else wearing a shirt, that means they've contributed something to the community and we've given them a shirt. So those people are also part of the team. As are you. So this is a community event, okay? So Will and I, let's see if this is working. There we go. So our mission here is to help accelerate the adoption of AI in our community. So I'm out in the community a lot talking to different groups, different leaders, civic leaders, business folks, and my sense is that people aren't, they don't share my same sense of urgency, I think, about things. And we want to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on. So quick show of hands, first time at a Birmingham AI meeting. Sweet. All right, great. Welcome. We're really glad you're here, and we hope to see you again. We didn't run out of pizza, which is good. So if you've been to the meeting before, you're going to hear us say some of the same things over and over again when we kick it off, okay? We would like AI to be a net job creator for Birmingham. We would like AI to be something that happens for us, not to us, okay? And just quick show of hands, who here has a paid ChatGPT or some subscription that you pay for? Okay, great. In a typical room, okay, just so you understand, maybe like 5% of the people raise their hands to that question, okay? So you are different, okay? You are here because you are curious and you're proactive with this stuff, so thank you for being here. We want to take people who are curious and just help you get more skills. Okay? We don't want you to just be curious. We want you to be somebody that's creating value in your personal life or in your work. Okay? So that's what we're about. Will and I started doing this summer 2023. Yeah? Which in AI years is about 100 years ago. And so this event has it's been a snowball rolling down the hill that keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so, hello? Bueller? Oh, here we go. So we have some announcement to make. So we have started a fellowship, and this is the first time we're doing it, so we'll see how it goes, but I expect it's going to be a success. And we want to find a handful of people in the community who are sort of pushing the limits of AI in their respective fields. And we want to give you a little bit of money and give you some access to some more advanced tooling. And for this first cohort, we're looking for people who have master's or PhD level experience in STEM fields. So math, chemistry, biology, physics, engineering, those sorts of things. We want to bring a group of people together and sort of push the limits of what these models can do for science, okay? So if that's you or if that's somebody you know, right, we'd like to hear from you, okay? The applications are open for a few more weeks. Is that like 10 days, all right? So there's that. We are going to run a survey. we haven't run a survey in a while, and we kind of need to check in with the group. Like, where are people on their adoption? What are people concerned about? What do people want to hear more about? All of that, okay? So this is for us to figure out what to focus on in these talks, where to allocate some of the funding that we have so that you guys get the most value out of this, okay? So if you see an email, please take some time to share with us what's on your mind, all right? This event is not for Will and I, this event is for y'all, okay? Y'all are our customers. And then, this clicker is moody. Oh, well, okay. Okay, this is a big one. We're gonna hire a full-time director for Birmingham AI. And maybe somebody in this room right now, I don't know, all right? So Will and I love doing this monthly meeting. We get a lot out of it. And we've tried to do some things outside of this monthly meeting in the past. We just don't have the time for it. Okay, we're doing other things, but we see what's going on here, and we want the impact to grow. Okay? So this is like a well-paying full-time job. All right? We just know how much more we can do with full-time attention on this stuff. All right? So if this is like tickling your interest. By the way, if you're here for the first time, we send this deck out afterwards. Okay? So any links that are in here, this information, you'll have in your inbox tomorrow. Okay? So you don't have to try to remember it all. All right. So let's get into the talk for today. OpenAI has 5 levels of AI. Okay? Basically 5 stages of capabilities. And they've just slowly been progressing up this ladder. So I want you all to see what these 5 are. Some people have seen this. Some people it's going to be the first time. So conversational AI is the first level. And you can think about this as, well, like you'd be sitting down and having a meeting with another person. You go, I go, you go, I go, we're having a conversation. All right? And this is what ChatGPT was when it first came out. So if you used it in even today it still is this, but the first version was this. And this part of it is solved, okay? Like this is a solved level. The next level is what they call reasoning AI. So these are AIs that are effective planners. They can solve problems that require more thinking, so to speak. To be clear, in conversational AI, the way it works, and I'm sure you've seen this, is when you ask it a question, it immediately starts answering. And for really hard problems, that doesn't work very well. Okay, you need to think about it, sort of formulate a plan, right? Give me a minute to think, and then you're going to answer it. So this isn't solved, but the path to it being completely solved is like right in front of us, right? This will be solved in the next 6 months, okay? And then the next level is agents. So 2025 is supposed to be the year of agents. I don't think anybody means that agents are going to be solved this year, but you'll just start seeing them more in your work, okay? And I think in 2026, that's going to be a big deal, and we'll start noticing it. The labor market will start noticing it. So we want you to be aware of what's going on. Next month, we're going to talk all about agents, all right? So there are 2 other levels to this, which we're just not going to talk about. OpenAI hasn't started working on these, right? They've made no progress. So agents for a while, and then we'll talk about things when we get there, all right? So today, we're going to be focused on reasoning AI. Will's going to talk about DeepSeek, amongst some other things, and give you some context about how these models work. And then I'm going to do some hands on the keyboard stuff and show you some things, all right? Yeah, I think that's it. All right, applaud for me. Thanks. All right, you good?
Yeah, good to go. Thank you, Austin. All right, so this meeting is what we call our general meetup. And we actually have an engineering breakout meeting. And if anybody in this room is a developer, an engineer, they want to go deeper in the tech, then look into that meeting. And actually the next one is tomorrow night. So come up to me after this meeting, look in your email, you'll get an event link if you want to sign up for that. It's free as well. I say all of that to say that in this meeting, we usually stay higher level. And we want this meeting to really be accessible to everybody. And my job today is to go a little bit deeper into some of the technology that's come out recently to hopefully give you an understanding of what's changed in the last 3 to 6 months that's really pushing AI forward and allow you to take that understanding back to using AI and ChatGPT and just having a better understanding of the technology that underlies it. And so that is what I'm going to attempt to do today. And we're going to talk about reasoning models. Yeah, there's a bunch of reasoning models out there. O1, O3, DeepSeek R1. Oh my. Who here has used a reasoning model and they know that they've used one before? Hands up if you've done that. Okay, great. So that's, maybe 40% of the audience. A lot of people either haven't used one or they're not sure if they've used one. So what I'll do in my section of the conversation is explain these a little bit more. I'll use DeepSeek as a way to explain some of the advancements that has come over the past 3 months. And then Austin will give some more practical advice towards the second half of the meeting. But I said we're getting technical. This is pretty much as technical as we get. I've tried to simplify it as much as I can, which is we have an input and it goes through an AI model and it eventually gets you to an output. That is as simple as we can talk about it. When we use models, this is kind of like what's happening in the middle. Is that, people refer to it as a black box, and this is why. It's because it's just a bunch of numbers that somehow predict the next token to come out of it. And so an example is you say a sentence like the sky is, and then somehow all of these vectors that are inside this model result in you getting this output that says blue. And then it just works, right? And so for 99.9% of the time, you don't actually need to think about what's inside here. You just need the output, right? So you give it a prompt and you get an output. The models that we have today have gotten really, really good at this. If you think of ChatGPT, if you just go in there and you have a conversation with it, you are, most often you're really happy with the output that you get from the conversation you're having. Yes, maybe you have to then send it another message and ask for it to tweak this or to tweak that, but you're pretty happy with it. Like Austin mentioned earlier, there's situations though where this breaks down. Let me give you an example. All right, so this is an example that's kind of used in this space. Let's pretend you have 3 boxes. And on the bottom, you have a red box. And then above that, you have a green box. And then at the top, there's a blue box. And you ask the AI, you tell the AI, hey, I've got these boxes. Now I'm going to set a yellow box on top. And then I'm going to pull the green box out and put the green box on top of the stack. And then you just ask a simple question, what order are the boxes in? If we think back to this type of an approach where it's just running quickly, takes an input, that whole kind of scenario we just gave it, and then it expects an output, this is where we start to see accuracy drop very quickly. And so that's just a simple example, but you can think of anything that you might be wanting to ask that's more complicated. It might involve multiple steps. And so there is a method that's being used to help out in this type of situation. That is what gets us to a reasoning model. Simply put, of course, this is an oversimplification, but simply put, all we're doing here is letting the model have more iterations before it's giving you the final output. So before where we said, hey, we're going to run through this model once and then the output's going to come to me, we're saying like now you can take more time and talk to yourself a little bit and break it down step by step. So maybe the first step is saying, okay, here's the original order of the boxes. And then it stops. And then it goes back through the model again with that original order like clearly laid out. I'm going to show you an example of this in a second. But that is what really underlines these reasoning models. So if you do just have a question of, what color is the sky? This doesn't give you any additional benefits because you can already expect the models that we have today to be good enough to give you a great output there. But on the other hand, if you have something more complex or that you want to break down step by steps, that's where the reasoning models will help you out. So I actually have access to DeepSeek R1 through my code editor, which can explain later. But what's great about this new model is that it actually shows you all of the thinking it does. And that's very different than ChatGPT's, OpenAI's models, where they either hide it all together or they kind of distill it down into their summary that they want to show to you. And the reason for that is they're trying to protect their lead. This open source model R1 is trying to catch up. So they're trying to offer something that other models do not. And so I pasted this question into this reasoning model, and you can see how it thinks through. I won't read all of this, but in the first paragraph, it comes to the conclusion of what the box stack is once you just place the yellow box on it. And then in the second paragraph, it goes through the exercise of pulling the green box out and setting the green box on top. And then it actually runs a third paragraph where it just double checks itself. And it's like, hey, are my assumptions about this correct? It determines it is. And I didn't paste the final answer here, but it would just give you essentially the last two sentences again, where it says, here's the final order of the boxes. This is what reasoning models do, which I think is pretty neat. And we'll talk more about how you can use reasoning models in specific scenarios in a little bit. But the big headline over the past month has been DeepSeek. Who here has heard about this DeepSeek model from a Chinese startup? Okay, most everybody. So why did it make this much of a splash? Like, why are the headlines so big about this? There's a few reasons. One, it's supposedly from a Chinese startup. So the American AI labs have just dominated all of the kind of frontier models for the longest time. Nobody else has been able to put out a model that competes. This is the first model really outside that does compete. R1's the name of the model, and it's a reasoning model. They also have the normal conversational models as well. But the big thing is that it was supposedly really cheap to build and it's cheap to use. And they put out enough information about this where we can actually validate some of that. And so we're going to walk a little bit through that today, now with our understanding of what a reasoning model is. But you might be wondering, you might have shown up to this meeting today wondering why your NVIDIA stock dropped by 20% over the past month. And it's because of just how cheap it was to train this model and to use this model that people just pretty instantly rewrote some of their understanding about the next 5 to 10 years of, hey, maybe we don't need this much compute power to train and run these models. Maybe we don't need this much energy to train and run these models. Let's dive into how is it so cheap? This is probably what everybody did when they dropped their new research paper. So back in 2017, we've shown this paper before. Attention is all you need is why we are all here today. This paper introduced a new type of AI model that led to eventually what was ChatGPT. And when DeepSeek announced R1, they also released a paper that really spelled out both how they do training and how you use the model, which really shows where they were able to get all of these cost savings. So we're going to break it down into training and use. And then again, hopefully this leaves you with an understanding of what you can kind of expect in the future and just a better understanding of where we are today with AI. Let's start with training. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about reinforcement learning. Most of you in this room probably don't know what that is, and that's fine. We're just going to give you a pretty simple example here, which is when an AI model goes through the process of taking an input and then getting to an output, you then score that and you give the model essentially a reward of, hey, was that a good job or was that a bad job? And then based on that reward, all of these numbers change in the middle here. It's, again, very simplified, but in practice, that's really what's happening. You do this and you just let the AI run. You stay out of the way and it does all this work and you don't really know, it just tries a bunch of things. And then over time, it starts to see, okay, these numbers lead to better results where I'm getting more rewards as opposed to these type of numbers in the middle lead to me not getting as much of a reward. And so it learns how to create the right parameters in the middle here, which lead to good output. You might have heard someone say like, oh, DeepSeek is a 100 billion parameter model, or this is a 5 billion parameter model. They're actually talking about like essentially all of the little boxes inside the model that your input runs through to get to an output. And for the longest time, the only way we could get better output was to have more parameters in the middle, have more numbers that you can manipulate and move around. But we learned with AI that there was this limitation to just letting computers do that. We needed to add this component of human feedback into the process. If you, I mixed up the letters there. If you've ever seen RLHF, that is reinforcement learning with human feedback. So that is like it's been a buzzword inside of the technical community for a long time now. And again, a simplified way to think of it is just that you have humans that are creating they're evaluating the output, and they are a part of the reward assignment. So instead of just letting the AI run by itself, a human is actually involved in the process of saying, this output is good, this output is bad. And that is one of the key things, in addition to just more data and more compute power, that has let us get really good models that we've had recently, is that you just have so much human feedback in the loop of really pointing these models in the direction we want to so we get good output. But it's also obviously very costly. You know, it's time consuming and it's costly to pay someone to be in the loop, to have someone who's experienced enough to be able to give good answers in certain areas. And not only do we have that expense, but we have this additional expense now with this reasoning model. And that is, we no longer just have this one input to output, but that process might happen multiple times. And we need the final output. That's all the user cares about. They don't really care about what's happening in between. And so in addition to the human being involved in the rewarding process, we need to give some examples of reasoning along the way. Let's say you ask a math question. If you ask a math question, there's going to be a type of process that you need to go through. First, I need to do this. Then I need to do this. And then I get to the output. Likewise, if you ask a research question, you might want to break it down by topic first, and then dive into one piece, and then dive into the next piece, and then summarize up. All of those are different ways to reason to an answer. And when you have the additional complexity with reasoning models, you also need to do a good job of giving the models essentially samples of how to reason to a right solution. OpenAI doesn't release their training methodology. They talk a little bit about it, but they don't do what DeepSeek did and just release a paper every time. So we kind of have to guess at how they're doing things, but it's pretty well understood that there's still a lot of humans involved in their process, or at least that was the case 3 to 6 months ago. But DeepSeek had to do it differently, which is that they had, their budget is much less than OpenAI. And so they have these financial constraints that just immediately don't let them do the same things that OpenAI were doing. And so they had to say, hey, how can we do this without paying a bunch of humans to make it better? And how can we make this process cheaper and faster? And so they said, like, hey, what if we could just use reinforcement learning where we don't have to have humans involved in the process, where we don't have to generate or find a ton of good examples of reasoning. And that's what they went out to do. And essentially, they just exited out these example reasoning methods and the human in the loop feedback. And they just said, let's just rely on reinforcement learning, where the model is going to grade itself on if it's good or if it's bad, and then it's going to continue to learn. One thing that you still need to do is have a set of scenarios and answers that it can train on. And you might have heard that OpenAI kind of came out and said, hey, like, we have evidence that DeepSeek used our model for something. And this is essentially what it's being said that they did is that they had OpenAI's model like go through the reasoning process and spell it out, and then they use that as part of the training set on the DeepSeek model. So OpenAI is not happy about that, but like regardless, this is still a variation of the training method that has proven to work. And so it's significantly cut the cost when you just can take those out altogether and you just let the AI train itself. That is how they're able to get 20, 100x cheaper training costs for their model. Again, the great news is that this has been published in a paper, so it's open, and all the other AI labs are going to try this out. So we're going to see how effective it is. We're going to see what the true cost of this is, even if we can't believe in specific numbers. Training can be much cheaper. So here's just a point to make. AI has been around as a field for 75 years. Modern LLMs are just 8 years old. And so to think that like we figured out the best way to train these models, we figured out the best way to use these models is, of course, just doesn't make much sense. Let's move on to part 2 and use. I'm going to talk a little bit about how DeepSeek is cheaper to use, which is just as important as it being cheaper to train. But first, I wanted to mention something. I know a lot of people are like wondering, like, can we use these models? Is it safe to use this Chinese model where we just don't know where the data is going, where it's coming from, and it will break a lot of people's compliance? One thing to think is that they've open sourced this model, and so you can actually have this model running locally in the United States on a data server, and someone can set this up, and then you can use it in a way that is completely safe as far as like none of your data is going to China. If that's something that your team cares about and needs from a compliance standpoint, then you're able to work around that. You can sign up for a DeepSeek account, just like you can sign up for a ChatGPT account, and that's different. So that's just a nuance to know, is that because they've open sourced the model, you can actually use this locally in the United States in a way where you're hosting the model locally as well. Well, let's talk about why it's cheaper to use. Like one might think that the training, because it's cheaper to train, that just means it's cheaper to use. That's not really the case. There was another advancement they made in using AI as well. This just shows the power of constraints. Like when you just give a company $100 billion, they'll find you a solution for $100 billion. You give a company $25 million, they'll find some solution for $25 million. And of course, the amazing thing is just how close in output both of these solutions are. Normally, when you are talking to an AI model, it uses all of the parameters. It activates the entire model to then give you an output. And so you have to pay for all of that usage. When you think of a reasoning model, then that becomes 3x, 4x, 5x more expensive because it's doing the process however many steps it needs to do to give you an output. A paper came out before DeepSeek, so maybe this is an important point to note. A lot of what DeepSeek did is they took open sourced papers. They took research that other teams had done, and then they just packaged it together in a new way that hadn't been done before. So, it's not like they came up with all of this on their own, and they don't claim to come up with it all on their own, but they packaged it together in a new way for the first time that just happened to work really well. What they did in this case is they found a way, or they used a published way to only activate the parts of the model that matter for your request. Again, you think about a certain request, you say like, hey, help me solve this math problem. Well, all of those parameters that like help you get an answer to like, what toy should I buy my 5-year-old daughter? Like that doesn't matter in terms of this question. But if you're paying for that piece of the model to be running, then it's gonna cost a lot more. And so this is a method that's called the mixture of experts. And the way you can kind of think about it is if you take this whole model, maybe there's different paths through the model that are experts at solving a certain type of problem. Maybe it's math, maybe it's science, maybe it's coding. And the model itself can actually route itself through the right parts of its parameter set to give you an output. So obviously this can lead to 5x, 10x cheaper cost when you're running a model. So training can be cheaper and usage can be cheaper. Biggest takeaway to me is that this has been published and anyone can read it. All the labs are going to start using this. And for all of us here who don't have an American AI lab company, we're going to be better off because of it. We're going to have cheaper models. They're going to be better. They're going to be more specific to what we care about. So the last point I want to make before turning it over to Austin is that coming back to training, how you reward the model determines its value. Obvious for data scientists and whatnot, but we can think through models that are better at coding because you've rewarded it just for coding methods. You can think about a model that's better for this, that's better for science, that's better for math, that's better for writing. The good news is that that's all going to be like abstracted away from us. And one day, not today, but we will be able to go to chatgpt.com, just ask the question, and it will be routed to the right place for us. But today, there's a drop-down list of like 7 things you have to choose from, which sucks. So training is getting cheaper, usage is getting cheaper. AI will get better at doing what you need it to do, no matter what that is. All right. We'll have time for some questions at the end, most likely, but thank y'all. Appreciate it.
I was going to say, I'm in this stuff every day, and I just learned a bunch of things. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. One of the things we do is take complicated things, and we're not trying to oversimplify them. We want to communicate them in a way that are, easy to access. And Will's a very special type of engineer that knows how to say things and can communicate things well. So thank you. That was awesome. I really appreciate that. So I do AI consulting work, and so I've thought a lot about what I wanted to share today. We try to do 2 parts to these sessions, generally one that's kind of ideas and one that's more hands-on. So I'm doing the hands-on part today, and I've just been wondering what should I share with people. And it occurred to me that I should try to answer this question that I get all the time, which is, can AI do fill in the blank? All right? So I'm on the phone with people or in meetings, and it's like, hey, can AI do this? And I sort of have this lame consultant answer, kind of like, oh, it depends. But the answer really is, I'll figure this out at some point. I just need to be real close. Yeah, here's the answer. Let's find out, okay? If it was like 1990 and someone gave you a computer and they were like, hey, can it do this? You'd be like, I have no idea. Let's find out. Same thing with a spreadsheet. Oh, can it do that? I don't know. Let's go find out. All right? That's where we are with this stuff. This isn't meant to be a dodge. I know a lot of what it can and can't do, but if someone's asking me a fairly specific thing, let's find out. Okay? And so what I want to drill into here is, how do you find out? Okay? If more people have this curiosity, which I think you have, and you have a better method for taking that curiosity and going and resolving it, I think that'll be useful for y'all. So that's what I want to share today. And the way I frame this up for people is that thing that you're trying to do, you're not going to do that anymore, okay? We're going to hire AI to do that thing for you. And I think that's an important framework. And so there are a few things we have to do, okay? I'm just going to come back here and click. So the first thing people need to do is like choose something to work on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but in a discovery session, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what are your goals, like what's important, what are you trying to accomplish, what's going to get in your way, what are all the things you do every day. But I'm just going to assume you've showed up with an idea for something, all right? An AI cannot read your mind, okay? So one of the first things you have to do in solving a problem is getting explicit about what you want done. I think the lame word for this is documentation, okay? But now documentation is much more valuable because it's easy to take it over here and have this person do it for you, all right? So the next thing that happens is, and by the way, number 2, what we're really talking about there is creating a prompt, all right? I want you to write a blog post. Here are the instructions I'm going to give you to do it. All right? And so the next thing that happens is we try that out and see if it works. Okay, this is like the first little answer to our question. And inevitably, it sort of works. Okay? And so there's a lot of iteration between steps 2 and 3. It wrote a blog post, but it's terrible. And I think some people stop there. Okay, and what I do want you to hear is that if you know how to iterate on your prompts, there's a skill there to getting it closer to what you want. Okay, so 2 and 3 kind of happen over and over again. At some point, you have something you like, and I would say you sort of put it out in the world there. And we're going to talk more about this next month. And then when something's out in the world, we need to continue to evaluate it. Right? Is it still working over time? I want you to reflect on how much this is like hiring a new person. Okay? What role do we need? Oh, what are they going to do? How are they going to do it? Right? Oh, they just started here. Are they doing it correctly? They aren't. Right? Let's give them feedback. Okay? And that doesn't stop, right? That's sort of an ongoing thing. It's how we're used to working with people that we hire. And this really isn't that different. Okay? So this is not a person, but it is helpful to think about it that way. Okay? You're sort of onboarding them is what we're talking about. All right? So we've talked about conversational AI. We've talked about reasoning AI. And autonomous agents are these third pieces. This is the 5 levels of AI here, but I need to relate this back to some actual real-world stuff for you. Okay? These are real models that you can use in here. And so I want to give you a framework that I think is more helpful here in thinking about these things. So conversational AI is like sitting down, and I've said some of this, so it's like sitting down and having a meeting with somebody. You're just talking. You go, I go, you go, I go. Okay, that's sort of how it works. Reasoning, I've gotten too far away. Oh, okay, that's fine. Reasoning is like planning. Like we're having a conversation, it's like, okay, give me a minute, right? I need to like think through this and figure out what we're going to do. And if you keep talking to me while I'm doing it, that's not going to work. Like, give me a second, all right? Agents are the doing, okay? So that's when everyone gets up from the meeting and someone says, all right, let's go work on this. I'll have something for you at the end of the week, okay? So these models play different roles, okay? This is a bit of an oversimplification, but I think it's practically helpful. So how do you use these different models to get things done, okay? So if you sign into ChatGPT, the default model is 4.0 over there on the left. It's their best conversational model. And most of the time when people are using ChatGPT, I think that's what you're probably using by default, okay? There are other things on that menu. There's GPT-4, the old one. There's too much stuff in that menu, and we'll look at it in a second. But from there up, it's reasoning models, okay? So anything that starts with an O, O1, O3, okay? And there's some different flavors of that, all right? And so I want you to see them. I'll put my hands on the keyboard, okay? There is something new called deep research, which I absolutely want to show you today, and it's a research agent. Oh, look at this. By the way, Digital Motion is here recording today, and I want to give them a big thank you for what they're doing. If you haven't been here before, we don't normally record, so this is like a big step up for us. All right, so how do we make sense of all this? Yeah, I'm going to switch to this one. Yeah? Green and red, pretty easy? Okay. All right, cool. All right, so we're going to talk about steps 2 and 3 right now. And we're going to focus on basically getting our first prompt and then evaluating how well it's doing. All right? And so I'm going to get on the computer here and show you some of this. So the reasoning models are really good at planning. Okay, so when we're trying to figure out how to do a thing, they're great models to ask. Even if it's something you know pretty well. It's actually even better if it's something you know well, because you can sort of see what's going on and you understand if it's good or not. And there's a bigger prompt here, which I'll show you in a second, where we're going to ask a reasoning model to think about a process and then sort of turn it into a longer prompt about how to do that thing. All right? So let's look at this. All right, ChatGPT. Yeah, people familiar with this? All right, so the menu that Will and I are talking about is this menu up here which is just a mess. There's just a lot of stuff in here, okay? I think most people just zone out as soon as this thing opens, okay? So the model I want to focus on today, and I'm going to show you some things that are available in the $200 a month pro plan, okay? Not because I think you should buy that. I just want you to see what the leading edge is. Those are things you will have in the $20 a month plan soon, okay? The advantage of having the $200 plan is you can just sort of see the future a little bit because they're showing you the newest stuff, all right? So there's a model in here called O1 Pro, okay? And O1 Pro it's just the base O1 model, which is a reasoning model, meaning it can think and plan like Will showed you, but it just does it for longer, okay? And it turns out what they found, again, a simplification, but the longer it has to think, the better the result is, okay? That's sort of generally true, all right? So O1 Pro is a model that's just going to think quite a bit. So here's the long prompt that I have here. Here's our document prompt, okay? So this is a little more detailed, okay? So I'm asking it pretty specifically to put a plan together that another AI could follow. I mean, that's sort of on purpose. You could also give it to a human and they could do it, but you can see where we're trying to tack here. And I tell it to try to write it up in a way that's like a little more mathy than you might give a normal person, right? Decision trees, like if things can be quantified in some way, do that, right? And then it's going to create a guide, and then it's going to use that guide to work a realistic example, okay? So I'm just curious, who has a business process that they want to work on? Let's just name one. Yeah.
Onboarding.
What's that? Onboarding a new employee? All right, cool. Yeah, I like that. All right, so there are some optional things here at the end. Like if you already have documentation about how you do this, or if you have data on how well this process is performing, that's extra context that's useful here. We're just going to go at this really generally, all right? So all right, so since everybody's making everything great again, we're going to do this. All right, so we're going to ask it to do this. So it's going to think about employee onboarding, and it's going to create a guide, like a framework for how to do that, and it's going to run through an example, okay? Anybody used O1 Pro? All right, a couple people. It's going to think about this for a while. In fact, we're going to have to go find something else to talk about for a minute. All right? My guess is this will take 3 or 4 minutes. Okay? So if you're used to using the 4.0 models, this is really interesting. The most interesting thing about it, I think, is this sense that I just asked somebody to go do that for me, and now I can go do something else. It's a really weird feeling. But it immediately feels like you're working with a person. Okay, so that's going to think for a little bit. And just so we have another reference point, let's come over here and show what this looks like if we did it in the normal 4.0. Okay, so this is just the conversational model. We should have kept this. Let's see. All right, go ahead and get all that. All right, so same exact prompt. Okay, we're going to ask it here. And you're going to see it, right? It's just going to immediately start talking. Okay? So to Will's point, okay, for things like what color is the sky, no, that's super simplistic, but things that sort of just have a factual basis, it would be weird if someone you were talking to had to think about that for a long time. Okay? But in more difficult things, the reasoning is really important. So I'm not going to get into everything that came out here, okay? I just really want you to see how these different things are operating. Like if we go back over here, we're still cooking, okay? All right, so that's going to create a prompt for us, and it's going to create a guide for how to do employee onboarding. Now, if that's a process you're interested in, the first thing you want to figure out is how well does this thing work? Okay, good, here we go. 1 minute, 57 seconds, all right? All right, so, it's trying to think of a framework for how we measure the productivity of this process. So how long until someone's productive? Do we retain them? Do they feel good about onboarding? Okay. This is not an onboarding AI. This is a general AI that just happens to know a lot about lots of things, okay? So we could take this particular, here's the example, right? This is a tech company, it's sort of like talking through how it's all gonna work. So we could take this whole prompt, okay, and I'm gonna come and copy it, all right? And when I'm using a prompt, I don't need it to think about it a lot. I'm basically gonna say, like, here's how this works, and now we just need to talk about it. So this is actually a much better case for 4.0. We're just gonna have a conversation. So over here, I could say, I'm gonna start a new one, and I'm gonna say, here's how we onboard. Let's onboard somebody, all right? All right, I'm gonna give it the whole thing. All right, so it's gonna start talking me through it, okay? Now, this thing is a really good co-pilot. So, right, like the first way you would use this is we're not gonna put this AI out in the world and let it just cook, right? This AI is not going to be onboarding people, all right? But I can now give it to someone. Like, we would have spent a lot more time looking at how it worked and does it fit. We would have iterated on that prompt a lot so that it fit with our culture and how we did things, okay? But when it's done, you can give it to someone immediately and they can use it, okay? Structuring this kind of thing this way, I feel, is really important because what we are doing is preparing ourselves for a world where we can give it to the AI. And so the extent it is built in that way, we are like climbing up that ramp, okay? All the work we do today manually, I mean, a lot of it's automated, but whatever we're doing today versus a world where AI is doing a lot of it, I'm talking about work that happens in front of a computer, organizations are going to be going from where we are today to that world where AI is doing a lot of it. And that's not just going to be a switch people turn on, right? It's going to be kind of a ladder that people climb up or a ramp, okay? We have to figure out how to like offload the work we're doing to the AI, okay? And we have to onboard the AI. So that's why it's structured this way, all right? So in my experience, using these powerful reasoning models like O1 Pro, even O1, the results are much, much better for these kinds of things. That's not something that's like quantitative for me right now. I will show you some attempts I made to do that, but a lot of it is just the feel of it, okay? So really quick. All right, I want you to show you deep research before I move on. So deep research, it's amazing, okay? A lot of people are feeling like the artificial general intelligence right now using this thing. And it uses the O3 model, which you have access to a mini version of it on some of the plans, but you don't have access to the whole thing. And it's a very, very smart model. And it creates a lot of economic value. So for example, I asked it questions about, hey, I'm trying to like solve some tax problems for my business. Like, how do I minimize my tax exposure? It was like a complicated business structure question, okay? And my sense is that what it gave me back after thinking about it for like 10 minutes was probably $2,000 worth of work. Like if I had taken it to an attorney, if I had taken it to my accountant, all right? It's that good, all right? And so let me just show you what it looks like really quick. I think you only have access to this on the Pro plan right now. And it's the interface is a little different. There's a button down here that says Deep Research. And you just click it, and let's start a new chat just so you can see. Right? I'm going to give it the same thing. No, that's not. That's the old one. Let's go back to this. We want it to do this, okay? Let's start a new one. All right, so deep research. So what deep research is able to do is they've kind of solved the problem of hallucination. I'm not going to say totally solved, but you know, the hallucination is when the AI gives you a confident but wrong answer, right? It doesn't say I don't know. So this model is very smart, okay, which is helpful, and it also has access to the web. So O1, O1 Pro, O3, those models don't have access to the internet, I think. right? So this is the smartest model and has access to the internet. And so it's quite a joy to use. And so the first thing that it does, which I like, is it asks me a bunch of questions before it starts thinking. And this is important because it's going to think for like 10 minutes. So it's like, hey, before I start doing that, and you can't interrupt it, like we're going to need all the information. So I'm just going to say, let's make some assumptions, okay? And I'm just going to let it cook, all right? So this is going to start this process. It's just sort of telling me what it's thinking about. All right, so I have now hired somebody to do this research for me. And I'm going to go do something else. Okay, and we'll come back and look at this and see where it ends up, all right? So deep research, if you come back here, okay, it is an agent in the sense that it's going to go out and do this research, right? I'm not telling it where to look or all these things. It's going to go on the internet, it's going to put a plan together, and it's going to bring back a really high-quality piece of research for me, all right? It uses reasoning to do that. You see how these things kind of stack together? The conversational model is important. We're going to put reasoning on that. The reasoning lets the agents work. If an agent can't plan, it's not going to be a very good agent, okay? So that is the full deep research. I put a post on LinkedIn probably a month ago that was like, I don't think people should worry about buying the pro plan. It's $200 a month. That's changed a little bit for me, like using this, because I feel like I'm getting things that are incredibly valuable. And the quality of it is much, much higher. So if you have $200 to spend on something like this, maybe buy it for a month and see what you think, okay? As part of the fellowship, we're going to give that to people, right? Okay, cool. A nice plug. All right, so the next thing that happens here is evaluation. And I'm not going to go through this. I just want you to see it. So when you have a prompt and it produces a response, the question people have is this good? Okay? So there's a much longer prompt. This is like the abbreviated version of this, where I basically have it create a bunch of dimensions, like an onboarding guide. Like what are the 10 to 15 dimensions that we would rate the response on? Like we're onboarding somebody. Did that go well or not? Okay? And it will look at your prompts and it will score it basically on all the dimensions. All right? And the way this is really effective is you can run that prompt with 4.0, with O1, with O3, with Claude, with Gemini, okay? And you get all the results back and you give it to this thing and it'll score them all and show you how these different models do, okay? You end up with something. I had to take this stuff out of Excel, out of this and put it in Excel. But you end up with something like this. So this was a real problem that we were working on for my startup Conserve. And we wanted to see how well it could answer this particular question. Like we're international expansion, all these things, what should we think about? And so I created a prompt that was like a market analyzer. And I created a prompt that was like a market analysis evaluator. Like, is this a good, okay? Is everyone following me? And so I ran it with I ran the prompt with all these different models. And the evaluator score all the results, okay? And so for this particular use case, you can see how they did. It was like 1 to 5, right? It was just a 1 to 5 scale, all right? So this is the thing I'm trying to encourage organizations to do, right? Like, do you feel comfortable with the AI, like sort of running the onboarding? I feel pretty comfortable with like this. And so for each important process in your company, it's worth knowing, can AI do a good job with that thing? And you need to have some way to like score it. Because a new model is going to come out tomorrow or next week. And you need to be able to run it again and see, oh, where are we now? Right? Are we ready? Okay? And so I want you to have this framework as you go out into the world. A prompt is like a piece of software, right, that you can hire to do a thing. And we sort of naively ask ourselves, is it good or not, the results? But I'd like you to be more structured in how you evaluate the responses, okay? I think that's very important. It also forces you to get clear on what good and bad is for that process, which a lot of people have not done, all right? All right, so we didn't talk about applying these this AI. And this would be like giving it to an agent to go and work. 2025 is supposed to be the year of agents. Next month, we're going to talk about this for the whole meeting, mostly. And we're going to talk about OpenAI's operator. Oh, I switched to the bad one, sorry. And we're going to talk about how this might disrupt your work. I think it's naive to think it won't. All right? And so I think certainly some of you are here because that is a concern of yours. The thing where this is really going to start showing up is when agents are live and out in the world. Okay? And let me show you why really quick. So if you have the Pro plan, you have access to a research version of this. This is called Operator. So if you don't have this plan, you've never seen this before. All right? What this is, if you notice, it doesn't say, what can I help you with? It says, what can I help you do? Okay? And so this thing does things. I'm worried I am probably annoying the people that cut my hair because I've been running this thing to schedule appointments for myself. And then canceling them because it's just like a demo. So, but the question I had is, could it schedule a haircut for me? Right? So this thing has a browser. It has access to a keyboard and a mouse. And you tell it what to do. Like, not even in great detail. Just the questions a person would have if they were trying to do it, like, where do you get your hair cut? Like, who cuts your hair? Like, when are good times for you? And it will go and work. All right? So you see something like this. I had to like work on the prompting a little bit to like get it here, but it's like, well, what month are we booking for, right? It's giving it some instructions on who cuts my hair and how to do it. Importantly, it can look at my calendar, okay? And if there's no availability, it can start looking through future dates, right, until it finds one that works, okay? And let's just press enter. I just want you to see what this is like when it's going. All right, so again, sorry, Birmingham Classic Cuts. But, you know. By the way, those guys are great. You should definitely get your hair cut there. So we're not going to spend too much time, because this thing right now is a research preview, is what they're calling it, which means it's slow and stupid. Okay? But you can see how, and it's using a 4.0 level model to run. So it's using, at this point, kind of their dumbest model, okay? You can imagine what this looks like with an 0.1 model, with an 0.3 model, and with enough compute where it's actually, there's no reason why this couldn't be going 1,000 miles an hour, okay? It's sort of slow on purpose. If you navigate away from the screen, it'll stop, right? They want to make sure someone's watching it. There's a lot of safety around this kind of thing, okay? So anyway, it's just going to cook, and it will do this, okay? It'll open up my calendar, and it will get this done. So I'm just going to stop there. We are going to talk a lot more about that next month, all right? And so we sold out this month. I'm sure we will sell out next month again. So the meeting for next month's already live. So that's the QR code. If you want to go ahead and register, strongly recommended. You can do that now, okay? I will leave that up for a second. We're really lucky next month. Del Smith is the CEO of Acclimate, and he is going to be here to sit down and just tell about his business and what they're doing with AI. It's a biotech company. They do genetic research. It's very interesting, okay? So that'll be half the meeting, and then we're going to get all into these agents for the second half, okay? Again, I'll send you this deck tomorrow morning. All right? All right, cool. We probably don't have time to do a panel. Okay, and that's totally fine. So I'll leave this up here. We did finish on time, which is good. I'll probably have time for one question.
Did operator finish?
Oh, jeez. No, I stopped it. I'm so, oh, the other one. Oh, yeah. No, thank you. I always ask myself the same thing. All right, this is it. All right, so yeah, it finished. It thought for 5 minutes, okay? So again, you'd have to sit down with this and read this, okay? This is going to be pretty long, and me just scrolling through it's not going to help you. But there are a couple things to notice. It does do inline citations here, so it's very clear about where this came from, which is really different, And at the end, it usually, again, it's extremely thorough. I mean, how about this? In the email I send out tomorrow, I will put this response in there and you can read it. Okay? All right, great. And at the end, it's got a bibliography, it cites its sources. Okay? That's why when I was talking about the tax thing, like if I had GPT-4 a tax question and gave me an answer, I'd be like, yeah, I don't. It could be the same answer, but it's just like, yeah, I don't know if that's right, if that's true. But here it's like, here's the website, you can go look it up, right? It's just a very different feeling, and it's pretty cool. So, yeah. Sure.
Okay, so I work for a company that has the prototype Microsoft.
Okay.
I'm seeing all this stuff I'm doing, so I created a database the other day just by typing in stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes. It filled in anything it could, state, city, zip, all that. I didn't have to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
So is Microsoft running on these models, or do they have their own models, or are they using theirs and theirs?
It takes a lot of compute to do this stuff, right? So Microsoft partnered with OpenAI. So all this stuff that's running is happening in a Microsoft data center somewhere.
It just popped up last week.
So part of the deal is that Microsoft owns the IP alongside of OpenAI. So they have access to all the same models. The difference is that Microsoft is this enormous organization and they're slow. And so I'm saying from the product standpoint, like Copilot is probably the worst out of all of them. Now you can still do amazing things. It can still do amazing things, right? But if you stack them all up, it's at the bottom.
Right. No, yeah.
Okay? So.
But that's what I'm asking, because
Yep.
when I'm started just working in Power Pages, and I was able to
Yeah.
do some things that no one, I can't get this to do this yet.
Yeah.
But it's got to be using what you just did to create that database, correct?
Probably not.
No?
Probably not.
Okay.
Right? So, yeah. Listen, someone's going to release models next week that are going to be better than all this, and then the next week, and the next week, and the next week. OpenAI is ahead right now. Okay, that is an important thing that didn't get brought up in the DeepSeek thing. OpenAI is probably a year ahead of everybody still. Okay? And that'll be 9 months, that'll be 6 months, and so everyone's going to catch up. But they are still, and I don't know, Will, what you think. In my mind, they are still quite a bit ahead. So, I guess so, I mean, if it's interesting.
You had that documentation and training so can you, if you have like a manual or something, a PDF, just upload it and we'll read it and know what to do from that, like instruction manual?
Yeah, definitely. And if you don't have that, just have someone turn on, screen recording when they do the thing and just talk through it, and then take the transcript and stick it in there. So, yeah, pretty soon they'll just be able to watch the video. Pretty soon they'll just be watching us and saying, "Hey, would you like me to help you with that?" I think we're 18 months away from that, honestly. Okay, I want to be mindful of everyone's time, so thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you next month.